Professor Hassan Imam, chair of the session, has very kindly given a very elaborate overview of the multifarious works and personality of Dr. Mukhtar Ahmad Ansari, in whose memory the Department of History and Culture instituted this lecture series in 1982, and it's really very delightful to share with you all that this has been one of the most consistent, of course the oldest feature of the department, and very steadily heading towards its golden jubilee. So I would just share a few of the speakers who have addressed this lecture in the past, including the likes of Professor N.R. Farooqi, Professor Narayani Gupta, ma'am, Professor Kunal Chakravarti, Professor Sunil Kumar, Professor Uma Chakravarti, Professor Nazaf Haider, Professor Andre Wink, Professor John Koch, Professor Amar Farooqi, and in the same series of illustrious speakers, today we have Professor Mahesh Rangarajan. And of course the theme of the lecture, it also reflects upon the different aspects of the personality of Dr. Ansari, and how we have been shaping history, and how through this series as well we have been showcasing the range of, say, discourses that the department indulges in. So we try to pick up the best of the speakers, and environmental consciousness, environmental concerns being one of the most foremost issues of the day related to our own survival and existence on the planet Earth. So I mean, who could be a better speaker for this topic except for Professor Rangarajan? So it's over to him now.
Thank you, ma'am. Moving forward with the program, I would like to call upon Prakash Sharma from the Department of History and Culture to introduce the keynote speaker of today's lecture, Professor Mahesh Rangarajan.
Good morning, everyone. The question of ecology has acquired a central position to various movements that took place during the late 60s and afterward from both around the world and in India, be it gender or caste movement or any regional movement demanding autonomy from the Union. As the reconfiguration of the national question was going on, the politics of ecology was getting crystallized. Today on board we have with us Dr. Mahesh Rangarajan, Professor of Environmental Studies and History and Chair Ashoka Archives of Contemporary History, Ashoka University, Sonipat, Haryana. Professor Rangarajan takes interest in South Asian environmental history and has explored themes like human-wildlife conflict, relationship between local community and the protected area they live in. Today he will be sharing light on the theme Nature and Nation in 20th century, the future of planet today, a historical perspective. Professor Rangarajan graduated as a student of modern history from Hindu College and completed his masters from University of Delhi. He had been Rhodes Scholar to Oxford and completed his PhD in the year 1992. During this time, he worked as a journalist and was editor of Telegraph Kolkata. He formerly taught at the University of Delhi and Kriya University, where he later went on to become the Vice Chancellor. He was a visiting faculty at Cornell University, has been a visitor at the Center for Ecological Sciences, Indian Institute of Sciences several times, and also at National Center for Biological Sciences, Bangalore. He held office at Nehru Memorial Museum and Library from 2011 to 2015. In 2010, he led the Elephant Task Force, Gaja, which was meant for the protection of the elephant. His interest area, along with environmental history, also lies in the colonial history of British India. He was a member of the founding team and corresponding editor of the Cambridge-based journal Environment and History, headed by Richard Grove. He is a member of the executive board of Association of South Asian Environmental Historians. A few of the books authored by Professor Rangarajan are Nature and Nation in 2015, Nature Without Borders in 2014, India's Wildlife History in 2001, Fencing the Forest in 1996, among others. He has published several scholarly articles in journals from across the globe. Delivers series of lectures at various Indian and foreign institutions like Woodrow Wilson School in the program of South Asian Studies, Centre de Sciences Humaines, and also invited as speaker in various prominent Indian news channels for his electoral wisdom. Connecting the broader perspective on conservation, politics, and nation, he will be the best speaker for today's theme. Thank you.
Thank you, Prakash, for that wonderful introduction. It is now time to hear from the Professor Mahesh Rangarajan himself. I would like to invite Sir to deliver his address.
Good morning, Mr. Hassan, Honorable Head of the Department. It's an honor and privilege. I want to assure you that ये इतने बड़े दिग्गजों का नाम आपने गिन लिया है, इस नाचीज को शर्मिंदा होना पड़ेगा। आप बहुत बड़े लोगों का नाम ले रहे हैं। ये तो हमारे पुरखे हैं, इनके किताबों पर हम क्या कहें, बचपन तो नहीं स्टूडेंट थे तब से इनकी किताबों के बारे में पढ़ इनके बारे में पढ़ लेंगे. So please don't have big expectation because I'm certain to disappoint. It's privilege to be at Jamia. I will confess that I first came here during that postdoc I had at King Murthy because one of members of history department said you must come. So I said of course I will come. He said you will be happy to know we have the best cricket ground of all the 3 universities in Delhi and I will show you cricket. We had been watching cricket. There are many things wrong with British imperialism, but cricket is one of the better things. And of course, it is Indian game. Professor Ashish Nandi said cricket is Indian game invented by the British. Unfortunately, one can say this about a very senior fellow scholar, is often wrong, but on this he's right. It's very important to remember the people whose footsteps we follow. Professor Mohibul Hassan was biographer of the economy of Mysore and the polity under Hyder and Tipu. And when patriots in 20th century India thought of a symbol, they thought of different symbols. Around 1900s, as documented by Professor Sumati Ramaswamy, Bharat Mata emerged. Bharat Mata was fair. She held a trident. She had the map of British India that included present-day Pakistan, Bangladesh, and please note Burma. But next to her was an enormous lion with a name, Simha. It's coming from us. Simha, or in Farsi, Shir, in Urdu, proper Shir. This is Urdu. The first translations, for instance, by the great Mrs. Beveridge of Jahangir Nawab, incorrectly translated that Nur Jahan shot 5 tigers, for which Jahangir covered her with gold moon. I'm sure that part sounds very nice to all of us, but nobody's ever going to cover us with gold moors and we don't want to shoot 5 lions. So these animals are already part of our consciousness. And it's not a coincidence that Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, about whom we hear more nowadays, always short. When he wanted a symbol of the Azad Hind Fauj, chose Furtila Baag. तो बहुत साल पहले राष्ट्रीय अभिलेखागार नेशनल आर्काइव्स में एक एग्जीबिशन जिसको इंग्लिश हिंदी में प्रदर्शनी कहते हैं उसका आयोजन होने वाला था. तो वहाँ एक साथी ने फोन किया कि भाई इसको क्या हो, हमने तो लिख दिया लपकता हुआ बाघ. मैं कहा लपकता बोलोगे तो सही नहीं लगेगा. तो हमने बड़ा सोचा, सलाह मशवरा लिया. साथ थे उन्होंने कहा कि इसको फुर्तीला बाघ, द स्विफ्ट टाइगर, द स्प्रिंगिंग टाइगर. ये एक्चुअली ओरिजिनल नहीं है. इट इज द टाइटल ऑफ one of the first biographies of him. It's called the Springing Tiger. So we were not being original. So Tipu was a very interesting. He died in 1799 on the gates of Srirangapatnam. In her book about Tipu, Brittle Bank has recorded something which we should have known, but You know, the history of India is sometimes known to people who come and study it better than Indians. And being from Tamil Nadu, I should have known this. That in the Tamil country, there are Vaishnavite temples which show Tipu Sultan on the hunt, killing a tiger. And you know why they show it? Because he endowed those temples. Tipu Sultan endowed the Vaishnavite temple. But there is a reason that he endowed these temples. He wanted the people who prayed in these temples to pray that he succeed as a ruler. Tipu Sultan was obsessed with tigers. He had a tiger's head on the cannon, tiger stripes in the uniform. He is the only Indian ruler who didn't sit on a simhasana. You see, from the early centuries of the Christian, we don't say AD, because you have to be a European Christian to say AD, who belongs to that church. I have no objection to the Gregorian calendar, but I have objection to Anubhav. So let's say CE. And in this period, Indian kings have sat on lion thrones. Zanzibar ruler, by the way, sat on an elephant. So you see, nature is not far from political power. But Tipu sat on a tiger throne for a reason, according to British. I don't agree with her, but let's think about it. She says he ruled a vast realm where people spoke several languages: Marathi, Tulu, Konkani, Tamil, Kannada. Was he a Kannadiga? Who knows? Was he a Muslim? Was he an Indian? Was he an Indian nationalist? There's a new book by a famous author. He came on TV saying that kingship and violence are synonymous. I thought that was not news, but obviously that's a discovery for him. हमको लगा कि वीरता, power, और क्रूरता. The line between cruelty and bravery is very thin. One person's cruelty is another's bravery. But Tipu used the tiger as a symbol to unify people, and he had a very interesting contrivance called Tipu's tiger. It was killing a person in red coat who was a European soldier. This was built by the French. It was displayed in India of his library. Now, I am so sorry for myself. Can you feel sorry for me? By the time I went there, it was not on display. And even if it had been on display, I wouldn't have been allowed to do what scholars, even grown-up people, can be children. And when we aren't, we should be. You pull the tail of the tiger, and the soldier said, "Ah!" This was the inspiration for Tipu to fight the British. And of the rulers in Peninsular India, this is one of the few who never ever compromised. That's why he became a symbol. That's why Mahbubul Hasan's biography, it's not an easy read, it's full of detail, but we should always have respect for the narrative historian. All the analytical history we think is really great. We are standing on the shoulders of giants. He's one of them. The other thing I saw when I entered was the poster for this book. It shows a mute swan who's white, Hans. But the swan of legend in India is not the mute swan. It is the Rajhans. Now you have Wikipedia, you have all these images, you can look at it. It's a goose with a double bar. You can see it in fact in Okhla Bird Sanctuary. We have one of the great living historians of Delhi in the front audience. I've learned much from her, so she can correct me. Actually, they even come to Delhi Zoo and the Biodiversity Yamuna Park. They come from very far away. The Rajhans is probably the inspiration for one of the greatest plays ever written, Nala Damayanti. You see, Nala wanted to send a message to Damayanti. Oh man, he couldn't. He didn't have flying pigeons in those days. But he trained a goose. Can you train a goose? And the goose went to her palace and shouted, "Nala, Nala." I think she imagined it. So, the swan we have today is a European swan. It does come to India. But when it comes, huge number of bird watchers come to Okhla Sanctuary. You'll see one swan and 300 bird watchers with big cameras. So see, our view of nature has evolved. Our view of the nation has evolved. It's become inclusive of the mute swan, which has come on the poster of Jamia. We were just walking to this very fine audience from the history department, where I was offered a very nice cup of tea. And we saw two trees on it. One was eucalyptus. I'm sure everybody knows that eucalyptus is, where is it from? Australia. But you know, it's been in India from the 1830s. It was grown because the poles were useful for building. There are a lot of views against eucalyptus today, but 98% of the eucalyptus in India is of one hybrid. You know what a hybrid is? Very famous in our lives. You know why? Vicks, vapor up. आपको खांसी और दर्द हो तो Vicks vapor up आपकी मदद करेगा. The other tree, please note, is neem. Most people think it's a North Indian tree, South Indian tree, Gujarati tree, Maharashtrian tree. It's not. It's from the Indo-Burma border. Pradeep Kishan tells us in his book that this is an evergreen tree. Neem ka ped, very famous short story in the Vedic period. The neem is very important because the leaves are given as a paste. I can assure you, you are really lucky you didn't have to have it as a child. The neem oil, however, is very good as a balm. The neem leaf, if you are ever troubled by mosquitoes, please remember, if you burn neem leaves, they'll all run away. Now, burning green leaves is very complicated. After the lecture, we'll discuss how to do it. Neem datul is still used in Asavarpur village, which is close to Ashoka University. I mean, we are on land which is theirs. So what I'm trying to say is that even the trees around us remind us of our history. There's a very important book, you can find out who wrote it. It's called The Lion and the Cheetah, Exotic Aliens in India. And it argues that the cheetah is an alien because it was brought at a certain point of time in history, the Turks, 13th century. I don't know, Muhammad Khali. And the lion is an alien because it was brought by the Greeks, 6th century BC, Alexander. हमारे यहाँ कहते थे ना, तुर्कियों ने बड़ी हरकतें की थी, यूनानियों ने हरकतें की थी. I have a question. How many years do you have to live in a country before you cease to be ill? How many decades? How many centuries? How many generations? Because humans are also, by that stretch, aliens. Humans came to what is now India 65-70,000 years ago. Hominids came 1 to 3 million years ago. By all evidence, we are all Africans because some very enterprising people walked across North Africa, the desert, and came to India. By all evidence, these animals, the lion and cheetah, are part of a certain kind of geography which would have been familiar to people like the Greeks, the Turks, and the Farsis, because they are typical animals of arid country and even of desert, which stretches from northern, western, central India through Western Asia, Sinai Peninsula, Philistine, North Africa, into South Africa. Incidentally, the lion evolved according to archaeological, paleo-archaeological and genetic evidence. Historians should read some archaeology and paleo-archaeology. By contrast, so this tiger, lion, cheetah being foreigner, unfortunately, is not true. I think it's tiger nationalism. You see, the tiger became national animal in India. In 19th century, the tiger was declared the national animal. The lion was dethroned. This is a very important coup. You know, you've heard of coups? How many students are there of history, politics? You have all studied coups? I'm sure you haven't heard of this. I like to study these things. Not why it happened, when it happened only and how, but why. Dr. Karan Singh went to the press conference where he was asked, is it true tiger has been declared national animal because your nickname is Tiger? So he should have said, I would have said in his place, how can I be against the lion? My name is Dr. Lion. Karan means Singh. He is a Dogra. Dogra is a common surname among lion. You see, think about this in northern India. Why are so many communities called Singh? There is a reason. The lion was very important as a symbol, whatever the symbol was. I think it was a male lion, we can debate that. He then said something of enormous significance. He said the tiger is found in 11 of 16 states. Karan Singh ji, 6 भाषाएं बोलते हैं. मुझे 6 आती हैं. Dogri, Punjabi, हिंदी, फ्रेंच, संस्कृत को संस्कृत भी बोलते हैं, अंग्रेजी थे हो गए। तो उन्होंने कहा कि ऐसा है कि बाघ जो है वो एक प्रतीक है, देश की एकता का प्रतीक है। बाघ 16 में से 11 प्रांतों में पाया जाता है प्रदेशों में। इस वजह से इसको राष्ट्र पशु घोषित किया। It has been made national animal as a symbol of unity and diversity. He didn't say, it's very interesting, he didn't say the other thing, which I will confess I found out only 2 months ago. There's a book called Monsoon Economics by Prof. He says 1972 was the most serious drought in India since 1876. 1876-77, there was a rainfall shortage of 30%. 1972 is the rainfall shortage, 25%. There's not much difference between 25 and 30 if you're a cultivator. There's a recent film made 25 years ago. Somebody says Hindi films don't address social problems. I don't agree. असुतोष गोवारिकर की लगान, सबने देखी हो? उसमें गाना है घनन घनन, बढ़िया। उसकी शुरुआत होती है आमिर खान। हमारे फिल्मों में गांव निवासी हमेशा नाचते गाते थे। नाचना गाना गांव में होता है किसी शादी के साथ। नाचना गाना होता है जब फसल कटती है। बाकी समय लोग काम करते हैं, तो काम बहुत मुश्किल काम है। आपको देखना है मनोज कुमार का पुकार, देखिए वो गाना आपको याद होगा, मेरे देश की धरती सोना उगले। लेकिन उस गाने में मैंने कल स्टूडेंटों के साथ बैठ के गिना 12 ऐसे काम दिखते हैं जो अब नहीं होते गांव में। For instance, plowing by the bullocks, water drawn by human labor, sowing by the person. Now many places they are using automatic seed drill, etc. But let me go back. In 1972, there was a drought of 25% shortage of rainfall. Now you will wonder what is the connection between tiger and lack of rainfall. Here comes the answer. On 26 March 1973, Mrs. Gandhi wrote a letter, or rather issued a statement. It said, Project Tiger abounds in irony. The country, the land that was famous for centuries for this magnificent beast, animal, is battling to save it from extinction. वो देश जो इतने सदियों से जाना हुआ था इस अद्भुत जानवर की, यहाँ पर इसको ये जीवन मरण के हालत में, और हम इसको इसके बचाव के लिए लड़ रहे हैं। क्या look at the language, so powerful. People are very cynical. They think she couldn't have written it. See, when a woman speaks, we still don't want to think that she can speak. That's the reality of India. अरे इनको किसी ने सिखाया होगा, ट्यूटर थी। I can name 3 people who are named as tutors. You study the history. Next sentence, first sentence of next para says, the tiger cannot be preserved in isolation. बाघ को बचाने के लिए सिर्फ बाघ को नहीं बचाया जा सकता। And she goes on to explain that the tiger has to be preserved as along with the chain of the living things of the forest, and that this is a symbol of India's effort at environmental preservation. Very important. संरक्षण, now I use सरकारी language, पर्यावरण का संरक्षण. There is no word in any Indian language for पर्यावरण, invented by some bureaucrat. It's not even there in literature. Then she goes on to say, but government, if the union government cannot do this on its own, भारत सरकार अकेले में ये काम नहीं कर सकती. We need the cooperation of state governments and the people. Very important. Project Tiger is an endeavor of union government, state governments and people. You know why she had to say this? The 9 tiger reserves could only be created with the cooperation of state governments. The state governments agreed on the Project Tiger, which took away their revenues. आप ही सोचिए, अगर कल कोई कहे कि किसी योजना में शामिल हो जाए, क्योंकि पहले आप अपना जेब खाली करिए, आजकल तो जेब होता नहीं है, वो देंगे आपका क्रेडिट कार्ड हमारे हवाले या रुपये, ठीक है, फिर हम लोग ये संजोग के लिए निकलेंगे. We'll get out on cooperative venture. You run away. So imagine Karnataka gave up, I forget the figure, in today's figure, 40 crore of revenue from Bandipur. Bandipur was an old tiger reserve. Similarly, Corbett Park, Kanha. Kanha was created first as a reserve forest by British for the Assam forest. Manas, reserve forest. So, people, this is an effort of the people not just to save the tiger and the forest, but to protect the hydrological cycle. Let me go back to her first speech. You see, Mrs. Gandhi became Prime Minister in 1966. At that time, no large country on earth had had a Prime Minister. हमें इस पे फख्र है. She was the first woman Prime Minister of a large country. First country was Ceylon, Sri Lanka. Second was Israel, Golan. They're very nice countries, they're very important countries. I'm not running them down. But see, when you look at the major players in the world today, India had women Prime Minister 48. Her first speech was not in Jamia. She didn't even come to Delhi University. When she did come, please look at that photo. She's with 2-3 very important people. I won't tell you. Go look at it. Honorary degree in Delhi University. In Bangalore University, she said that the rainfall pattern has been erratic. We are living through the most difficult drought of this century. Remember, 2 years of drought failure. 1966, when she becomes Prime Minister, we were living through 2 years of drought failure, first time since independence. There was no food. All the people who are critical of Green Revolution don't realize, as a student of history, she, on the first trip, went to United States. She took her sons from Cambridge. It's a very nice photo, Mrs. Gandhi. Both the sons with tie and all that. Sitting with President Lyndon Johnson, very tall man. This woman's 5'2". Oh, and he's 6'2". But he's leaning over to pretend that he's short. And just before she goes on the trip, she meets Inder Malhotra, very great journalist. He has written the best biography for first till. He's written one more small biography. The second is published by National Book Trust. वो 16 भाषाओं में आप अपनी जबान में पढ़ सकते हैं. I can read it in Tamil, you can read it in Urdu, Kannada. She says to him that you don't understand Inder Sahab. मैं अमेरिका क्यों जा रहा हूँ? इस देश को अनाज की सख्त जरूरत है और मेरी दिक्कत क्या है? मुझे अनाज मांगना पड़ेगा दिखाए बगैर. He said कि मैडम आप what are you saying? You mean you're going there to beg for food aid? She said, listen, ये सब भाषण, I'm paraphrasing, ये सब भाषण जो लोग देते हैं ना, वो यहाँ पर अनाज लाने और लोगों को देने के जिम्मेवार नहीं है. मैं हूँ. I am responsible. I will do what it takes. We now know that when she came back from the trip, Hindustan Times article, she called Professor M.S. Swaminathan and said, Professor, this shouldn't happen again. You do whatever you want. This shouldn't happen again. By then, Professor Swaminathan was in touch with Professor Prof. He was in touch with a great Indian who very few Indians know, Gurudev Khush, who worked on rice. And the French Revolution took shape in Punjab, in Western UP, the state, my university in rice in the Kaveri Delta, which my father is from, and the Krishna Godavari Delta, which is in Andhra. This revolution was called the Green Revolution. The United States said something very political. They said, the Green Revolution will gain pace so that it will prevent a Red Revolution. इनकलाब ना हो जाए कम्युनिस्टों के नेतृत्व में, इस वजह से हम चाहते हैं कि हरित क्रांति कायम हो जाए. The peasant who gets food, जब वो खाना खाएगा ना, भर जाएगा. घर में लोग खाएंगे तो ये क्रांति, इनकलाब, ये सब चीजें वो छोड़. Now there are 20 countries which embraced the Green Revolution. But now comes the irony of history. You see, now there is a very interesting memoir of Vietnam War. Vietnamese soldiers who were going into South Vietnam and the guerrillas
who were funded by North Vietnam were under strict instruction not to harm American scientists working in the fields where they were breeding IR-8. ये प्रजाति को जो अमेरिकी वैज्ञानिक वहां पर उसका देखभाल कर रहे थे, वियतनामीज थल सेना के लोगों को और गरिल्लों को बहुत साफ कहा गया था कि कुछ भी हो उस जगह में उनकी मारपीट मत करना, वहां आप ना विस्फोट करेंगे ना बंदूक चलाएंगे, लेकिन अगर आप अंदर घुस सकें थोड़े पौधे निकाल के ना, आप यहाँ So the North Vietnamese were also into the Green Revolution. So was China. You see, the Chinese were friends of Pakistan from 1963. John McNeill tells us that in secret, Pakistan, which by the way had very high productivity of wheat, the Pakistan, as you know, in the partition of India, got the best canal irrigated lands on earth. The best canal irrigated lands. Pakistan has highest per capita irrigation on earth even now. So these seeds were put on military planes sent by China, and Pakistani military planes and flown to China. And under the nose of the United States, but chipal chipai, Pakistan was supplying the sworn enemy of the Chinese. Now the Green Revolution today is looked at very differently. When you try to explain this to people, don't mind what I'm going to say. Below 40, I envy them, don't I? You know why? Not you personally. They say Green Revolution, but sir, it destroyed the germplasm. Where there were 100 varieties grown, only 6 were grown. It resulted in the nitrogen going into the groundwater. It resulted in pesticides, which have killed a lot of the insects and birds. It has long-term ill effects. All true. Now, there is a speech given by M.S. Swaminathan on the Green Revolution. You will be surprised. He admitted to all these problems. There's a speech, another speech called Synergy in Indian Agriculture, 1970 Sardar Patel Memorial Lecture, All India Radio, which is in his selected works, edited by a man called Anwar Dil. Anwar Dil. He says all of these are true, but we have to go ahead. And he also argues all the things today argued as alternatives that we need to develop them, but that we can't give up these things. See, it's very simple. For centuries, farmers, cultivators, innovated. ये innovation है ना आजकल, Center for Innovation, वो हर खेत में बसा हुआ, हर कोई जो हल चलाता है, हर कोई जो हाथ से काम करता है, वो भी innovator है. See, think about it. Somebody worked out brilliantly that beans, you must have eaten beans, rajma, chole, warfari, everyone eats. Wherever you plant beans, it takes the nitrogen of the air and fixes it in the soil. But it fixes only very small amount of nitrogen. In the 1900s, a very brilliant two people, Haber and Bosch, worked out a way through synthesis of ammonia to put a lot of nitrogen in the soil. So everyone here who's eaten, you must have had breakfast, aloo paratha, kebab, dosa, idli, you must have eaten cornflakes. Every single item productivity has gone up because of urea. And urea cannot be made without the synthesis of ammonia. The synthesis of ammonia transformed chemistry, it transformed agriculture, it transformed biology. And it is the single biggest transformation scientifically of lifestyles of humans of the 20th century. This is not me, it's a very, very great scholar called Vaclav Smil. He's 80 years old and he's written 70 books. So even if he started writing at the age of 20, he must be writing in his sleep. He says something more important. It's very, very interesting. He says whichever pond you go to, lake you go to, close water, ocean you go to, you'll find huge amounts of algae. You know what algae are? Green things with leaves. And you know what they're doing? They're sucking up all the oxygen. And you know why they've grown over there? Because of the nitrogen. So there is very interesting idea here. All the countries of the world are using more and more urea. Today, 30 African countries are importing grain. Earlier, they were importing American grain. US was very upset about the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, which is fair. We equally be upset about all invasions by other countries or any country. Great powers never are. Remember what I said? One person's hero is another's villain. Veerta, cruelty and bravery, there is a thin dividing line. But to go back, now you know the interesting part. The grain is being imported by them from Russia. But Russia also uses a lot of urea. And the Russians and Americans are giving the same advice to African states who are to set up factories to manufacture urea. And since you don't know how to set up a factory, we're such good friends of yours. We'll set it up. You just pay for it. So there's a very interesting phenomenon. After 1945, there was a race to catch up. This is a race. Imagine a race where you can never catch up. However fast you run, the person ahead of you is already got a head start. That's what the developing countries feel like. If you look at per capita use of minerals, land area to support per person, energy, food, timber used, and so on, Western Europe, basically the members of European Union and Britain, which has of course now left Europe. There's a former Prime Minister who said that Great Britain should be 51st state of United States. Even though they don't play cricket in America, sometimes it seems that they are part of United States. North America, Canada, US, Australia, New Zealand, Japan. If you put these together, they actually emit the bulk of the greenhouse gases on Earth. It is true, China today exceeds US. It is true, they keep saying India is increasing its greenhouse gas emissions. But tell me, in a democracy, should it be one person, one vote? Or should it be one nation state, one vote? Should nation states' power be apportioned as it was in 1945? In 1945, there were 5 powerful nation states. You know which ones they were? Britain, France, US, USSR, China. Now, one set of Chinese has been replaced by another. But you know, this race to catch up also generated environmental havoc across the world, both among those ahead in the race and those behind. Think of something very important in India. India, by 2000, had built so many dams that we were among the top 5 on earth. These dams produced hydropower, which we are all using. They produce water, which in Delhi we are using. Much of the water we use comes from Tehri Dam. It will come from the Renuka Dam, Himachal Pradesh. The power, for instance, in Ashoka University, comes from Bakra Dam. So does the water in the canal. It's the Bakra Dam. I can name the canal Munak Dam, Munak Canal. In southern India, dams are even more important. There are dams built in the 13th century, as Kathy Morrison reminds us, by Vijayanagar rulers. Because in southern India, you know one of the big differences of southern and northern India? You must know your geography. आपको याद होगा वो पूछते थे ना, एक फिल्म में पूछते हिमालय ना होता तो क्या होता, और वो लड़का कहता है हिमालय नहीं होता तो अरब की तरह हिंदुस्तान रेगिस्तान होता। हाँ, मेघा जो है वो तिब्बत की ओर चले जाते। ये 1 मिनट के लिए सोचा नहीं है कि तिब्बत में मेघा नहीं बरसती, इसलिए तिब्बत का 20 लाख वर्ग स्क्वायर किलोमीटर जो है वो रेगिस्तान। थोड़ा उनके बारे में भी सोचना चाहिए ना, वो हमारे पड़ोसी। But in southern India, you don't have a water tower. You know, the third water tower of the world is the Himalaya. The first is Antarctica. This is Ken Pomerantz's view, not mine. The first is Antarctica, the second is the Arctic, and now all of them are melting. However, in southern India, we never had this. Sheetal Jal, Jamia, Ganga, Ganda. South में नहीं था. In the south, there was no water in the river except in the time of the monsoon, so you dug the wells deep. And you built check dams. And the Vijayanagar rulers' stone check dams are still working. So dams are not some modern development thing. But there is a difference, they didn't displace people. In 1950 to 2000, minimum 20 million people were displaced by dams. I'm sorry, I can't accept 50 million, more popular figure. 50 million displaced करने के लिए, you have to inundate an area size of West Bengal. But 20 million is a large number. And who are these 20 million? They're people who didn't have land rights. Who doesn't have land rights? Very interesting question. See, there's film which all of you would know, Mother India. It had Nargis, her future husband Sunil Dutt, who performed great sacrifice, which I'm about to tell you about, and Rajkumar. There are 2 sons, 1 mother. It's a very difficult film to watch. You know, it is one of the most difficult films to have watched. I watch it every few years. Because she struggles to keep that family together. Her husband runs away. The moneylender is, he has no character. Her son, one son, eventually becomes a dacoit. I'm not going to tell you what happened to the last scene. It's a very difficult scene to watch. The other is a good lad, but how much work can he do? This is a farm family headed by a woman. One out of 3 farm families in India are headed by a woman who has no property rights. Legally till 2009, they didn't have the right to property. 2009. How many years ago was that? Very recently. So Indian Constitution came in 1950. Now, this is not to blame anyone. It is to say that they had to struggle for their rights. They got them. Every party supported this. It has not been implemented as well as it should. See, in many states, in many villages, they don't even know, उनको पता भी नहीं है. But that is how progress comes. It first comes, then people get mobilized, then they start realizing their rights. Similarly, in 2006, there was a very important enactment, Forest Rights Act. Until this act, people who lived in the forest had no rights. हक, वहां जीने का अधिकार उनको कतई नहीं था. उनको किसी भी समय वन विभाग वहां से निकाल सकता. अगर वो वहां रहते तो उनको मुफ्त में काम करना. उसको बेगार कहते हैं. बेगार मैंने unpaid labor. So the British who went on शिकार, the Rajas who went on शिकार, they said यहाँ इस दस्ते में 50 लोग, वहां पे 30 लोग, वहां पे 100 लोग, निकल अभी. And they would go and drive the tiger. Imagine this huge animal is running towards a macha. These supposedly brave men, they would shoot it. Maharaja or warrior, Abhi, one of the members of families in politics, another is also in politics, third is in politics. They're very proud of him. He was a great modernizer, Madhav Maharaj. But he shot 500 tigers. For shooting them, he went into what? Tower. He didn't go on foot and shoot them. And there's photo of Lord. You know why Lord Curzon liked him? He said he's a fine man. He got me 5 tigers before breakfast. The photo of Lord Curzon with him and those 5 tigers. Ye inki bahaduri thi. Was it their bravery or cruelty? I leave it to you to judge. I think it was bravery at that time. It's cruelty today. But what I want to emphasize is the labor for that shoot came from the people of the forest and next to the forest. The forest became exclusive, much more under British rule. 600 square kilometers, more than 500,000 square kilometers was taken over as government forest. Within this, hunting, fishing, taking out anything, you needed permission. Protected forest, little less, reserved forest, much tougher. So, 2006, 2009 are very important years in Indian history. They're like 1976. See, there is a lot of things wrong with emergency. Demolition of the huts of poor people, forcible sterilization. But one good thing happened in emergency. Government enacted bonded labor abolition. So there was a survey done. You know how many people were bonded laborers? I remember this figure, it's shocking. 50 lakh, 5 million. ये बंदे लोग थे. For generations they had been working for a person. The other very interesting thing is that contrast. The India of 1972, there was a minister who had led the country in the defense as defense minister in the Bangladesh war. उनकी मिसाल दी जाती है और समाज में दी जाती थी. अब पता नहीं लोगों को याद नहीं है. बाबू जगजीवन राम. Babu Jagjivan Ram had been a minister from 1946 to 1979. It's a record. Leaving a few months, he was minister. And he had had 2 very important ministries. Railways, and it is in his time that everybody in the railway was given the same water. Before that, there were 3 separate containers. You go find out which containers. You know why he got it abolished? Because in the biography of Jagjivan Babu, first BA, first MA, first LLB, topper all through in the state of Bihar. First depressed classes person. You know, Babuji was equally fluent. He was extremely well read in Hindi, Angrezi and Sanskrit. Or he was very critical of Dr. Ambedkar. That was his right. Great follower of Gandhiji. But he became agriculture minister. So he was in charge of this Project Tiger and wildlife as agriculture minister. This came under his ministry. The difference is in 1876 when there was a drought. It's very scary what I'm going to tell you. And again, I didn't know this till 2 months ago. Many people in Maharashtra, what is now Maharashtra, died due to lack of access to water. कुएं का पानी वो नहीं पी सकते थे, तालाब का पानी वो नहीं पी सकते थे। तालाब जिसपे गांव का हक था, गांव जिसमें तालाब पर बाकी लोगों का हक था, the rest of the village had right to the pond, not them. Men, women, children. They died of thirst. The wells were for the community, not for them. Which community? The rest. And most important, the private wells were not opened, despite requests despite the collector saying open it. So it's very interesting, by the next drought, 1890, the administration dug the wells. The administration dug the wells and said these wells can be used by these people. Now this is a big change in independent India. We should not underestimate the transformation in independent India. Access to education of Dalits, scheduled castes, access to health, access to water, access to the modern amenities of life. And my very distinguished colleague, Mukul Sharma, has just written a book, Dalit Ecologies. He's not happy with himself. Right now, he teaches 3 days a week. Other days he sits, he's rewriting it in Hindi because he says then it will be accessible, which is a good idea. You know, one of the things you realize is for Dalits, environments they include the built environment. They include sanitation, they include water, they include a whole lot of things. So environment का मतलब यही नहीं कि फूल, पेड़, पत्ते, झाड़ी, क्या कहें भाई वो पहाड़, समुंदर, वो आता है, लेकिन environment जो होता है, वो केवल कुदरत के बारे में, वो हर किसी चीज के बारे में, जो हमारे से जुड़ा हुआ है. हम सांस लेते है ना, हम पानी पीते, हम खाना खाते, वो भी environment. Think about it. The poorer person, the poorer you are, the more you are exposed to air pollution. The poorer you are, you drink more contaminated water. The poorer you are, you live next to a landfill which is in spontaneous combustion. So does this mean there will be endless conflict on environment? Actually, I have a completely different view. I believe that if you are middle class or upper class, you will also eat the contaminated food. You will also be subject to contaminated water. You and your children will also. See, the air purifier only removes the particles. Please, if you use an air purifier, I am not telling you not to use it. It doesn't do anything about sulfuric acid, nitrous oxide, sulfur dioxide, etc., etc., etc. there in the air. So this is something where the middle classes, historically very important in mobilization, child labor union rights, women's movement, national movement, अभी इन्होंने कहा social justice movement, आदिवासी movement, all these movements, पढ़े लिखे लोग इसके सामने होते हैं, उसमें क्या करते? That is how history is. Dr. Ambedkar, Dr. Jagjeevan Ram, you know the great Jaipal Singh, who led the Jharkhand movement. He was a champion hockey player in the Olympics. He spoke better English than most of us. He studied in Oxford. So this is something where we can come together. The enlightened person from a well-off section can also come into this. I mean, if you ask me to cite, I would cite the Godrej. I have nothing to do with Godrej. I want to make this extremely clear. See, one of the very senior Godrej is S.P. Godrej, Soli Godrej. He wore black armband after the very sad events in Mumbai 1990. Mumbai 1993 had a lot of sad events, 2 sets, everybody knows them. And he endowed the World Wildlife Building, which is in Lodi Estate. And Piroj Shah Godrej, another member of the family, also endowed. The Parsis have a remarkable record of that. Remarkable. And what the Godrejas have done along Bombay coast is to retain and renew and restore the mangroves, one of the most endangered ecosystems. I want to say something very serious. Government of India in the last 2 years has put special budgetary provision for mangroves. It's got some very interesting mangrove mitra scheme, but it's a very important scheme. One of the most endangered ecosystems. The fish breed in the mangroves and they go out into the ocean. The mangrove can protect the shore from the ocean. And the mangrove is a unique ecosystem. It is more endangered than the forest. And the Godrejas have led the way in restoration of mangroves. They are not alone. You know, we think of Vietnam war, so many wars. But in Vietnam, mangrove restoration was headed by a great hero of Vietnam War, General Gia. तुमने कहा जो जंग में हमारे नेता थे, तब तक उनको रिटायर कर दिया था ऐसे. वो अब अमन के समय में देश के लिए कुछ करें, वतन के लिए कुछ करें. And he led, and the fact he was there gave great inspiration. So my submission would be that the nations of earth can and should cooperate. Of course they are not cooperating. See, it took so many years for them to cooperate and reduce nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapon reduction came because two unlikely figures became friends. Ronald Reagan, former film star and total anti-communist, and Mikhail Sergeyevich Gorbachev, who everyone thought is a hardline communist. He turned out to be someone, it's like you're heading a big organization and you suddenly say you don't believe in what it's been saying for so many years, and somebody doesn't shoot you. And they agreed on a series of treaties. 85% of the nuclear weapons on earth, which were there when I was a student, 1985, were decommissioned because of that. So we should not think that nothing is possible. We should look at the world, and I'll end here. I think I've spoken for a long time. Many people are getting bored, and if they are not, they're not showing it. If they are, they're not showing it. You know, there's a man who was killed in the United States, Bobby Kennedy. It's a very remarkable man. He came from a rich family. After his brother got shot, he started going and meeting the poor folk. He went to the Appalachian Mountains, miners who live, through mining. They're still in a bad way. They had a lot of illnesses because of the dust from the mines. Their children did not go to proper school. They couldn't afford a house. This is one of the richest countries on earth. They still are that, by the way. He went to the black communities, and it is extraordinary. He had 7 children. And a person with 7 children has a great strength. He can talk to a child of any age. So he's walking. One little boy comes, African American. He says, "Hi, what's your name? You good at math? Math? I'm not good at math. Tell me. Hi, how are you? My name's Bobby. What's yours?" And you know, when he died, it's the cortege is going. Almost all the people lining it are African American. One of them is holding a placard which says, "So long, Bobby. Won't see you again, will be." And he said, when people look at the world, they say, "Why?" But I say,